And thank you for joining our webinar today, Taking the Next Steps in Project Portfolio Management Maturity with Planisware and TPG. I'm Jack O'Neill, Account Executive at Planisware, and accompanied by our partner, TPG, Steve Serburn and Spiro Theopoulos. And in today's webinar, we'll be covering project management principles and their relation to software. In this instance, we'll be touching on how the concepts work in Planisware Orchestra, but the topics are applicable to any project portfolio management software in general. And then with that, I'd like to hand it off to our fantastic partners at TPG, who are presenting the content today, Steve Serburn and Spiro Theopoulos. Gentlemen.
All right, thank you, Jack. And everybody, thank you for joining us today. Along with introducing myself, I will present a webinar overview. So first of all, my name's Steve Serburn. That's the easy part for me. I've been with the project group since 2008. I've worked in multiple industries, manufacturing, construction, government, pharma, in both North America and internationally. And that was internationally before the pandemic, a lot different back then. My focus is on new implementation consulting, integrations, migrations, and training. In the past 15 years, my experience in project management consulting has been focused on project management principles and project management software solutions. All right. Originally, the focus was on enterprise solutions, meaning company hosted, but it's been evolving into cloud solutions such as Planisware Orchestra. The good news for you is that cloud solutions make it much easier to get up and running with a software solution. One of the primary benefits of using project management solutions is to create a single source of truth. Right? Too often organizations are siloed. In these silos, there's islands of information that threaten the veracity of the data being reported. So getting started, or as an introduction, my colleague Spiro will cover how to gain understanding, how we as consultants would gain understanding of your organization. And I will review how we go about identifying your expectations and how to achieve them. Right? So bottom line is, my belief is that your processes should drive the software, not the other way around. Right? So let's review what we're going to cover. One, we're going to take a look at your organization maturity. Then we're going to, I'm going to try to simplify what's detailed and can be detailed and complex. We're going to look at how do you identify that data you want to see and why, how to capture this data, and then how to get started. So with that, I will now turn it over to Spiro for his introduction and to review organization dimensions and maturity levels. And from there, we'll move to the process areas. So it's all yours, Spiro.
Thank you, Steve. Okay, I'm Spiro, and I'm with the TPG company as well, up here in the Northern Hemisphere of Canada in the Montreal area. My specialty is helping clients marry the process of managing projects, portfolios, and their resource management needs with solutions like those offered by Planisware. In the topics slide here, there's a logical reason for this order that we see here on this slide. First, organization maturity, which is essentially something that helps us determine if we are crawling, walking, or in a running state with respect to the solution implementation or change or transition of some type. Transitioning from something equivalent to Excel to something more robust and or collaborative, we need to measure or assess the organization's readiness and the desired state, which will highlight the gap we need to fill. So how do we go about filling or addressing this gap? We're highlighting our roadmap for such an endeavor. We need to look at the process. A common framework for a project delivery approach entails the process, or call it project lifecycle steps, as outlined by the standards body, the Project Management Institute, PMI for short, and their body of knowledge. We see here initiating, planning, executing, monitoring, and control. And finally, the formally closing down of a project properly. To manage, one needs to measure, and to measure a project's or the entire project portfolio performance for that matter, we need reports. So from a delivery perspective, we need these reports to guide our actions, to enable us to control the project. So the very first thing we need to address in a solution implementation are the reports. We can't jump into rushing into the configuration of the solution. We need to answer the questions, what do we need to see or have in our reports in order to make better decisions that will result in a successful, efficient, and effective project delivery? The answer, methods and tools, of course. So in order to put such reports in place that will contain the data we need and will speak to our stakeholders, and only then will we be able to start thinking about configuration and maybe begin here doing some of it, like creating custom fields. We cannot begin configuring, though, the solution until we know what we need to configure. That is why we start our journey by looking at the end result, the reports. And from there, we walk the process of delivering projects backwards into the execution step. In execution, there should be a project schedule that is in place that a project manager, let's abbreviate him as PM for short, is in the process of actualizing or try to realize or deliver. This is the phase or process step where progress information should flow in from our project team members working on that project. During the execution of the project, there are certain things that a PM needs from their team members, like their weekly or periodic status report on their tasks. How will the PM capture the status so it keeps the schedules up to date and gives way to the reporting that's required? Again, before we jump into execution, we need to plan the project. Chances are we have different types of projects, and to avoid reinventing the wheel every time we launch a project, we recommend putting in scheduling templates that will enable us to initiate projects more efficiently. What will those templates look like? What will be contained in them? These are questions that need answers before addressing it from a configuration standpoint. So, as I've explained, before we can move into the configuration of a solution, we need to address these matters in a logical fashion. That's why the agenda has been laid out the way it has. I would like to highlight two dimensions that are specific to performing a maturity assessment. Are we crawling, walking, or ready to run? Naturally, we need to take an inventory of three areas in order to introduce change successfully. The first, people of the organization. What are their skill levels and what are we dealing with? Do we have their buy-in? And what's the means of communication that we need to establish and maintain with people involved in this new project implementation initiative? Process. We spoke briefly about it, but what is it about the process that we want or need changed? Tools or the technology. At one point, there will be a need to test a solution. So we need to have what we call use cases to help prove that the solution works as required. We need to transfer knowledge as well from the implementation consultants to the people involved in adopting the solution. We need to ensure we keep it simple to ensure effectiveness. Then how do we go about taking such inventory? Well, with a maturity assessment, of course. A maturity assessment will help us identify which level we're at and what we want to strive for in terms of goal or target level. There are different aspects, dimensions, or disciplines involved in project management or portfolio management for that matter, like benefits, resource, process management, etc. TPG has its own maturity assessment model that we have adapted from our years of experience in assisting clients adopt solutions. There are other such models that you can find by doing a search. In such generic ones, you may see the scoring levels denoted differently than ours, like level 1 through 5 or low, medium, and high respectively, but is relatively the same idea, trying to define and assess or approximate the maturity level of various disciplines. A sort of example I can give you of a low, medium, high is where Excel is used or considered low, doing electronic time reporting to update the schedules that would be something considered medium. And high, earned value, which is a standard project measurement methodology. And with this, I will pass the baton over to my colleague, Steve, who will get into the remaining three topics with you: reports, execution, and planning. Thank you.
So the first thing is, as Spiro just detailed, we need to know what your organization's all about, okay? What's your maturity level? What are your people, your tools, your processes, all right? So we can understand how to design the processes. There's three levels of reports, all right? Strategic reports, portfolio reports, and project reports, right? And with reporting, look, it streamlines, it standardizes your processes in a software solution. You know, obviously reports are essential, but they shouldn't be a barrier. And one of the really great things about Orchestra is that their reporting is very robust and relatively easy to use compared to other solutions. And in reporting, you need to understand what data is required to make better decisions. Makes sense? So let's take a look at some of the reporting elements, all right? Not all of these, and I'm going to go through them carefully. So, transparency. Transparency is the output of your efforts. It provides consistent data view of all business units and processes across your organization. Schedule. All right. Schedule consists of organized activities, use work breakdown structure. Now, stating the obvious, schedule progress is usually the first area of interest. And, you know, it's like, is the project on time? Is it ahead of schedule, or is it late? So what's another element in reporting? Resources. Now, project management software provides, and this is really important, an enterprise resource pool. This allows you to view all of your organization resources across all projects. We're not working off separate Excel sheets or business unit sheets or anything. Everybody's swimming in the same pool. Resource metrics are critical from project selection before you even initiate a project, right? You have to select it through planning and execution. And then finally, there it is, we have cost. Now, aside from schedule, cost is usually the next focus area. At a high level, cost is captured as capital expenses and operating expenses. And there could be other categories you can capture cost at. There are multiple options for capturing and reporting costs. You can do it at all the way up at the project level, or at the summary level, or the task level. It all depends on your reporting requirements. So let's take a look at a report. This is a dashboard. Now this is a portfolio dashboard. All right. So the portfolio level views typically consist of KPIs, overall status, schedule, cost, issues. The KPI indicators, they really do serve a purpose in that they provide visual cues such as color and shape to help you more easily recognize your project and portfolio performance. Now, one of the things I like about this, over here in project, if I click on the name, Orchestra reporting or dashboards allow you to drill down for granular data. So let's take a look at that granular data. Assuming I clicked one of these, what does it do? It takes me to a project report. Now, on the left-hand side, these partial numbers here would be all my projects. So in the portfolio, I could select an individual project view, all right? So obviously, the data that we see in this report is specific to a project, whereas in that previous portfolio view, it was all of our projects, right? Now, one of the things that is really helpful and interesting about this project dashboard is that it provides, first of all, it provides a consistent view of all projects, all right? And one of the benefits is that this can be really useful for the PM for producing status reports, because the majority of the key data displayed is auto-populated and easier to create and send a project reports. So I showed you two levels. We have portfolio level of reports, and then you have the more granular project level of reports. So quickly, a reporting summary, and I know we're running through this a little quickly, but the whole idea is we're starting with the data. What data do we want to see and how we're going to see it? So what data do you want to see and why? You know, you can standardize and streamline your reports, not just for better decision making, but for better recognition. The more you look at the same thing, the more you tend to notice a change. It eliminates, and this is really important, it eliminates the burden of data collection and summary. That means manually putting all of your data together. And again, this is from the configuration and data requirements. The data that you need drives the tool selection and configuration. All right, so that's why we're saying we haven't even really done anything other than decided what data we need at this point. Now, the next question was, how are we going to capture that data? All right, so we're going to capture it in the project execution phase. Now, again, here are some of the key elements of the project execution phase. And let me click here. Consistent data capture. There's nothing better than that. Come on. Regardless of project type. Now, that's an important statement. You might not really realize it, project type, because different types of projects have different types of schedules. Different business units can have different, will have, not can, most likely will have different project types. So a standardized project schedule fields are important for consistent data capture. We utilize templates that contain the fields required for data reporting. Now, schedule. You have a waterfall schedule. That's your traditional schedule. Finish to start planning, driven by task dependencies. When this one starts, next one finished, this one can start early, whatever. But there are dependencies that a waterfall that drive your schedule. Then we have the very popular and new age, new trendy Agile. And Agile is trendy, all right? It traditionally started with software development, but it's evolved into other project types, right? Then let's see what we have next. We have resources. Remember when I was talking about the enterprise resource pool? Well, in the execution phase, when I'm running my project, in my project schedule, I am going to assign named resources, okay? So let's take, here's a schedule. This is actually a hybrid schedule. Now, if you can see here, right here, sprint 1, 2, 3, right in the middle, sprint 1, 2, 3. These are from Agile planning or an Agile project, where in the same schedule, we have your typical, as we move down to develop and test and modify code, we have our typical waterfall schedule. So in this case, we're combining both project execution types, Agile and traditional. Now, if I go here, this is a Kanban board, right? So this is for your Agile projects. Now, the really cool thing is that all the information that I enter in for each task in here that's required for reporting will display in, let's go back, in the hybrid schedule. So even though I'm doing using two different models, it's all of the information will display in one place. So with execution, right? Execution is essential for capturing and reporting data. That's what it is. What data do we want to see? Second point, execution. How do we capture it? Well, it's in the execution phase using our project management software solution. Data fields are required for reporting configured to start. The data fields, before you get started in the planning, that's where they're configured. And the important thing is the required data fields for all project types. Now, finally, planning. So what did we do? Data, what do we want to see? How are we going to capture it? Planning, how are we going to get it? All right. Again, similar to before, our planning elements. Scope. Scope identifies the project output expectations. A scope statement can be the PM's best friend, right? This helps you to control scope creep, gold plating, etc. You can consider it really your project's point of reference. Governance. Governance and workflows go hand in hand, all right? Governance establishes the rules of engagement for a project. Governance is necessary to ensure processes are followed. And actually with governance, it means somebody's in charge and they're going to be checking to make sure all the processes are followed properly. Workflows are the processes identified in the planning phase. Templates are really important. Templates, they're important for consistency. Templates utilized in the execution phase are established in the planning phase. Templates provide data reporting consistency across all projects by ensuring the required data fields are included in the project schedules. And finally, resources, whereas in execution, we use a named resource. In planning, we use roles, which again, enterprise resource pool, so we can see the capacity throughout the organization. Okay, here's an example of a dashboard or a histogram for resources by roles. Over to the side, we see analyst, consultant, designer. This is typical orchestra reporting capability. And here, this is the named resources. So right here in roles, we use this in planning. Here, with name, you use that in execution. In other words, in planning, I know I have enough electrical engineers, right? So then I hand it over, we're going to run the project, I hand it over execution. Now, instead of saying electrical, they will use named resources to assign to tasks. So finally, it's important to mention the Project Management Institute process groups and knowledge areas. Look, project management, it's not a software solution. Project management is the discipline, right? Project management software, like Orchestra, it's a tool. It's a good tool, it's a great tool, but it's a tool. Project management software is only as good as your project management processes. The PMI process groups and knowledge areas are your checklist, right? Your checklist for successfully managing projects. Depending on your maturity level, your organization can jump into projects with both feet or grow into the process group tasks as required. But it's best to use this chart, these guides, as your guide or roadmap, just a checklist to make sure you're doing things right. Trust me, and I'm not kidding, I use it and I refer to it all the time. Just double check what you're doing. All right, so with a planning summary. Planning establishes the foundation for consistent project success. It identifies your project solution configuration, or that's where you say, hey, look, make sure this is configured and here's how we're going to do it. And it establishes the governance role in your project. Make sure things get done right. So let's take a summary of our webinar, and only so much we can give you in 25 minutes, 30 minutes. So that's why we really took it down to what's your organization like, all right? The dimensions, people, process, tools, maturity level. Then the reports, that's the data. Remember what I said, we start off, what data do you want to see and why, all right? Then we go to execution. This is where you capture your data. The projects are configured to capture the data. And finally, to planning, which includes governance, workflows. Make sure your templates are right. You have your task schedules created. You have a resource pool. You have the cost, and all the items are configured to capture the metrics. So let's see. That does it for the processes. All right. Now, here's a closing statement from me. Portfolio project management and analysis, it can be, when you really get into it, it can be detailed and complex, right? What I'm hoping for is that we were able to paint a picture using our data, execution, and planning approach. So with that, I will stop this slide. Wait a minute, let's go to this. Thank you for your time, and I'm going to hand it off to Jack for closing statement.
Yeah, we are coming up on time. Thank you, gentlemen. So we did have one question from Braden. I'm going to hand this over to Spiro. Braden asked, company readiness didn't indicate size of company or does not indicate size of company, number of projects, et cetera, to justify the cost. How do you assess ROI when a lot of the value comes from improved productivity, reducing risk, delays, et cetera?
Okay, there's a couple of questions in here. I guess one is size of company. Sure, the size of company, organization, people, of course, the more people you have, the more complex it is. And so it's like trying to move those big tankers, those ships, you know, before they make the turn, they've got to kind of plan it like 5 kilometers or 5 miles out. The risk part of the question, can you repeat that, the ROI?
Yeah. So how do you assess ROI when a lot of the value comes from improved productivity? And I think to clarify, I don't know if we're talking about the tool or improved project execution here.
Yeah, benchmarks are important. I mean, worst case, I mean, you've got a subjective metric, like maybe a survey that you can ask your team after the implementation or during the implementation or before the implementation, so you can get a measure. So yeah, we can get subjective or more scientific if we think about some of the ways that we can get that down to that information.
I want to jump in as is my want. The ROI question, and Rich, it's almost like a chicken and an egg, right? Are we more productive because we're doing it more often, or are we more productive because we're efficient in our project management? It's a good question, though.
Absolutely. Well, it looks like we're just about out of time. And with that, I'd like to conclude today's webinar. Thanks again, everyone, for attending. Have a good day.